David had always been the kind of person who notices what others overlook. While everyone around me said those dizzy spells and memory lapses were just part of getting older, he wasn't satisfied with ready-made answers. It's curious how so often the people who know us best can spot subtle changes we ourselves fail to see. He noticed not only my symptoms, but the way I hesitated when speaking, how long it took me to recall something simple, and even the distant, unfocused look that would suddenly appear in ordinary moments. There's a powerful lesson in that. People tend to downplay signs when they don't fit their beliefs. It's like when someone insists a car is fine because the engine still starts, while ignoring the strange noise coming from under the hood. David wasn't willing to take that risk. He knew that when it comes to health, whether physical, mental, or even emotional, it's better to investigate early than regret too late. It's the kind of care that requires the courage to challenge the consensus around you. His presence in that moment made me think about how, many times, it takes just one voice to break through collective indifference. I've seen it happen in companies, families, and even friendships. One person notices the problem while everyone else prefers to look away. Maybe because acknowledging something is wrong is the first step to accepting responsibilities no one wants to bear. And David, still young, was willing to carry that weight, even if it meant facing skeptical looks and evasive answers. After all, he already sensed this wasn't just a passing chapter. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe to the Vintage Revenge Stories channel. We're building a community of amazing women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. I never imagined that such a quiet event could so radically transform my life. The mild stroke came without warning, almost unnoticed, and soon I was admitted to the hospital to treat what seemed like a temporary scare. The doctors insisted my cognitive function was intact, as if that single piece of information could explain everything. But to me, something had changed. A shadow unseen in any test results, yet felt in every hesitation, every moment of confusion. My daughter Carol became the voice of reason in that whirlwind. Without hesitation, she said I shouldn't live alone for a while, a decision that rattled both my pride and my routine. Carol didn't want to strip away my independence, but she knew the fragility of the moment demanded care I was reluctant to accept. Her insistence wasn't just out of fear but practical love. She reorganized my life, surrounded me with support, even if it meant giving up some of the freedom I had always treasured. That forced change was a shock that made me rethink what it truly means to be healthy. Because being well isn't always what medical exams say. It's feeling capable, safe, and independent enough to live life your way. And even when everything appears fine, the truth is life can demand that we adapt, accept help, and learn to live with limitations we never imagined. This only heightened my curiosity about what was still to come. When Carol decided to move in with me, it seemed like a natural gesture of love, something any daughter would do without hesitation. At first, she helped with small things, reminding me to take my medication, organizing my appointments. But over time, that help grew and became the center of my routine. What had once been care began to control my daily life, as if I had unknowingly become a passenger in my own life, letting her take the wheel without realizing it. It's curious how we trust those closest to us, especially family, and think that handing over responsibilities is a relief, a way to ensure safety. Yet when we surrender control of our lives, even with good intentions, we can gradually lose our autonomy. I didn't notice that my decisions were being made by Carol, until it felt so natural that I no longer knew what I truly wanted. This experience made me reflect on the fine line between caring and controlling. It's easy to confuse the two when emotions are strong, and often we don't realize the impact it has. I've seen friends who, in wanting to help, end up suffocating the people they love. And in the end, that's not love but a kind of invisible prison. It's an invitation to think. How do we keep the balance between accepting help and preserving our freedom? This question has everything to do with what happened next. Even though I followed everything Carol and the doctors recommended, my body seemed unwilling to cooperate. The weakness grew, my appetite disappeared, and those uncomfortable tremors gave me no rest. It was as if something was out of place, a gear stuck for no apparent reason. Yet Carol insisted it was normal, just the side effects of my medication, and that with time I'd get better. But deep down, a growing doubt told me otherwise. When we feel something isn't right, it's crucial to listen to that intuition, even if those around us try to downplay or justify it. I felt like a boat adrift, trapped in an internal storm no one seemed to notice. Imagine a car that keeps stalling and everyone tells you it's the fuel, but you know there's something more serious wrong with the engine. That constant worsening is an alarm that can't be ignored, because our bodies speak louder than any shallow diagnosis. Besides, it's common in situations like this for the desire to appear strong to drown out our inner warning voice. Many people accept pain and discomfort as part of the process, but what struck me was realizing that the lack of improvement wasn't normal. It was a call to search for more answers, to question what I was being told, and, above all, to fight for my own health. And that fight, as I would discover, was far from over. My bedroom became my world, a space that had once been a refuge and slowly turned into a prison. The walls that had once protected me now confined me, while I felt my strength drain away little by little. Carol controlled every detail, from what I ate to the visits I could receive. At first, I thought it was normal. That age was winning and I needed this full-time care. But that dependency grew without me realizing it. The feeling of helplessness consumed me silently, as if every step backward was an invisible defeat for myself. It's common to confuse care with a loss of autonomy, but when we stop fighting for our own voice, isolation becomes an even harsher prison than any physical illness. I saw myself growing more and more distant from the person I used to be. This experience made me reflect on how many people live this same cycle without ever recognizing the problem. And when we start to understand this reality, an inevitable question arises. At what point does love turn into control? And what happens when control becomes a way of erasing our identity? These questions only deepened my unease, preparing me for what would come next. David had always been that steady voice holding me up when I needed it most, but I noticed his presence bothered Carol. He wasn't satisfied with what he saw. He noticed my increasingly fragile state and, instead of accepting superficial explanations, began questioning the medications, the routines, the way everything was being handled. It's remarkable how sometimes a watchful, skeptical eye can be the first step toward uncovering hidden truths. His attitude made me think about how often we let strange situations slide out of fear or convenience. David wasn't afraid to get involved, even if it created tension. He was willing to face discomfort to take care of me, showing that when someone truly cares, they don't settle for silence or prepackaged answers. It's an invitation for all of us to reflect. Are we paying enough attention to the people we love? Or do we prefer to close our eyes to what makes us uncomfortable? What he began investigating might have seemed like a small rebellion against Carol's absolute control, but it was much more than that. It was a search for the truth, for my safety, for the preservation of my dignity. And his determination was preparing me for an even more complex chapter, one where nothing would be as it seemed. David was never the type to be swayed by superficial impressions. With an almost surgical calm, he began recording every detail of my conversations about the medications and the symptoms I was experiencing. That meticulous attention is often what makes the difference between accepting a problem and truly understanding what's going on behind it. It was like a detective collecting clues invisible to the careless eye, preparing to uncover a hidden truth. When David compared my accounts with the official information about recovery, he noticed a glaring inconsistency. Symptoms that shouldn't have lingered, side effects that didn't match the prescribed medication, and a constant decline that simply didn't fit the expected pattern. It unsettled him because he knew that caring for someone is not just about following protocols. It's about looking with empathy, asking questions, and going beyond the surface. That phase of his silent investigation made me understand how small observations can turn into great discoveries. Often, it's the notes no one sees, the unasked questions that bring hidden truths to light. And it was that quiet yet determined search that paved the way for an awakening that would change everything. The journey was only beginning. David's phone call hit me like a punch of reality in the middle of my day, a steady voice cutting through the fog of my discomfort. He explained that my symptoms were not typical for someone taking blood pressure medication, something no one had ever told me outright. In that instant, I realized how far I had drifted from having control over my own health, blindly trusting in decisions made without my real involvement. When he asked me the last time I had spoken directly to the doctor, my silence said more than any answer could. I simply couldn't remember. That made me reflect on how often we hand over our lives to others and stop being the main character in our own story, especially when it comes to health. The patient-doctor relationship should be an ongoing dialogue, not just passive receipt of orders. David's warning was more than a question. It was an invitation to take the reins again, to reclaim control over my life and my health. That realization made me see that sometimes trusting others too much can distance us from what truly matters. Knowing ourselves and taking care of ourselves. And that awareness would open the door to difficult decisions ahead. It was hard for me to accept that, despite following everything Carol said, my body kept getting weaker. Each week, the weakness seemed to grow and the tremors gave me no rest. But what truly unsettled me was David's insistence, his ability to see beyond what I could feel. He refused to accept this so-called recovery, that to him was nothing more than a lie disguised as progress. David had a different gaze, an attention that went deeper than the surface. He researched, questioned, compared my symptoms with what he knew about strokes and recovery. To him, the fact that I was getting worse was a red flag, a warning no one else wanted to see. And when someone that close to you notices something is wrong, it's impossible to ignore that voice. That realization made me think about how many times we ignore obvious signs, out of fear, convenience, or even distorted love. David refused to let me face those doubts alone. He insisted on seeking answers, reminding me that the truth, no matter how harsh, is the first step toward freedom. And that search for truth was, of course, far from over. David knew that to uncover what was really going on, he had to act carefully and discreetly. He asked me to let a few pills accidentally fall, as if it were an innocent distraction. At first, I thought it strange, but my trust in him made me comply without hesitation. Those small acts, simple on the surface, carried the hope of the answers I had been desperately seeking. Hiding the pills until the following Sunday gave me a sense of mission, as if I were part of a plan bigger than myself. It was an act of silent courage, a chance to uncover the truth hidden behind words and routines imposed on me. I never imagined something so small could become a turning point in my life. That moment taught me that searching for the truth often requires patience and unexpected strategies. The path isn't always straightforward, but every step taken with intention brings us closer to what really matters. And the plan David had crafted would not only reveal secrets, it would forever change the way I saw my own journey. When the test results came back, it was as if a curtain had been pulled aside, revealing a terrifying scene. We discovered that I had been taking sedatives and muscle relaxants that had never been prescribed by a doctor. The truth was that these substances could, in fact, be fatal, and I was at the mercy of an invisible danger inside my own home. David didn't hesitate upon that discovery. With the clarity and courage that had always defined him, he created fake capsules to replace the real medication Carol had been giving me. It was a delicate game, a silent operation to guarantee my safety without anyone noticing. His actions showed me that sometimes, protecting those we love requires creativity, and even small acts of subversion in our daily lives. This stage of my story taught me that blind trust can be fatal, and that it is essential to keep a watchful, critical eye, even in close relationships. Not everything that looks like care is truly protection, and knowing how to tell the difference is a decisive step toward preserving life and dignity. My fight for freedom was entering a new chapter. On Saturday, while Carol was out, David moved into action with the precision of someone who knows every step matters. He replaced all my medication with harmless pills, a silent gesture that carried enormous hope. At first, I didn't know what to expect, but soon the mental fog began to lift, bringing back the clarity I had lost so long ago. In the days that followed, I felt my energy slowly return, as if my body were beginning to recognize itself again. It was a quiet relief, a discreet victory against everything that had been weakening me. Yet to avoid raising suspicion, I had to hide this improvement, maintaining the calm, frail demeanor of someone still unwell. It was a delicate balance between hope and the need for protection. That stage taught me the value of patience and strategy when it comes to reclaiming your own life. Sometimes healing begins with small gestures invisible to others, but they make all the difference to the one fighting in the center of the storm. And as I recovered, I began to realize that the real battle was far from over. While Carol was distracted taking a phone call, David seized the moment to access her laptop with the discretion of an experienced detective. What he found was a true vault of horrors hidden behind the screen. Chilling searches on how to kill elderly people without leaving a trace, proof of a cruel plan I never imagined could exist so close to me. Among the files and digital documents was a detailed journal she kept, describing my decline, as if it were a show for others to consume. Every word was a knife to what was left of my dignity, revealing how I had been manipulated and watched like an object, not a person. In addition, messages exchanged with the man supplying the illegal drugs made it clear that the plan had been premeditated and dark from the start. This discovery was a shock that transformed my perception of what I was living through. Realizing that the danger didn't just come from my frail body but from the very person who was supposed to care for me filled me with a mix of fear and determination. And that determination pushed me toward a path of confrontation that would be decisive for my freedom. David didn't back down in the face of danger. With courage, he followed Carol to the pharmacy, always alert to her every move. When she received the illegal delivery of medication, he photographed everything with the precision of someone who knows that every piece of evidence could be the key to justice. It was a tense moment where silence and adrenaline blended, knowing we were about to take a decisive step. With the evidence in hand, we went to the police and laid out the cruel scheme behind my suffering. The investigation was swift and effective, and soon the authorities staged a sting operation that left no doubt about Carol's and her accomplices' guilt. Watching them being arrested was a mix of relief and the feeling that I could finally breathe again, even knowing the road to recovery was still long. That chapter taught me the power of truth when pursued with courage and determination. I learned that even in the darkest moments, there is hope when we have people by our side willing to fight for us. And with that victory, a new cycle began, filled with challenges but also with rebirth. The courtroom became the stage where the truth finally had voice and weight before everyone. The evidence presented, exchanged messages, suspicious financial transactions, and the detailed analysis of the medication, painted a picture impossible to deny. With each document shown, my heart grew stronger because I knew justice was being done, not just for me, but for everyone who might be at the mercy of silent betrayals like this one. Carol was sentenced to 15 years in prison and her accomplice to 5. The sentence brought deep relief, but also the certainty that the road to healing would be long. In addition, we recovered almost all of the money that had been stolen. A symbolic gesture showing that it is possible to reverse the damage, even if not everything can be repaired. That trial was a harsh but necessary lesson on how the power of justice can restore dignity to those who have been robbed of it. This final stage of the process made me reflect deeply on the importance of fighting until the very end, even when everything seems lost. I learned that no matter how massive the obstacles we face, perseverance and truth carry a weight that no one can ignore. And with the feeling that one chapter had closed, a new stage was beginning to rise on the horizon. At 72 years old, I found the strength to reclaim what I thought I had lost. I got back behind the wheel, started taking care of my health on my own, and even became a volunteer at the school where I had worked for decades. This comeback wasn't just physical, it was emotional. It was a true rebuilding of myself, one that brought back my sense of purpose and belonging. It's remarkable how life can offer us new chances, even when it feels like everything has come to an end. I feel more sadness than anger over what I went through, because I've come to understand that what destroys doesn't deserve a place in my heart. This experience taught me that true family is the one that protects, nurtures, and strengthens you, not the one that uses love to control or harm. That lesson, though painful, has made me wiser and more prepared to value genuine and healthy relationships. Today, when I look back, I see a path marked by challenges, but also by constant rebirth. The story I lived is an invitation to anyone who feels trapped in a difficult situation. There is always a way to start over, to break free, and to live fully even when everything seems lost. And this awakening opens the door to reflections that go far beyond the personal. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly want to hear your perspective. And if this story made you reflect, like this video and subscribe to the channel to follow more real and powerful stories like this one. Because in the end, every story is an opportunity to see life through new eyes.